It's been almost 4 years since the tragic death of 22-year-old Joshua Woods, who sadly lost his life to what many are calling death over fashion. Joining me today, I have activist and community leader Deric Muhammad, who's been spearheading to fight to seek justice for this family. How are you doing, Deric?
Fine, I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining me. First of all, this is a tragic situation.
It is.
It really is, and it's just been happening too many times,
Yes.
more than we can possibly count. Now, the verdict has been announced recently, as we know,
Yes.
but I'd like to touch on that a little bit later. I first want to understand, why was it so important for you to support this family and kind of speak up for the Woods family?
Well, first off, from a personal perspective, just like you and others, I'm sick and tired of seeing the fratricidal conflict that takes place in inner city communities. I'm sick and tired of seeing young people kill young people over senseless madness. So I find myself getting involved in cases like this for my own sanity, first and foremost, so that I'm able to look myself in the mirror and say, man, I'm doing my best to try to push back against the darkness and the negativity that appears to be claiming an entire generation. And I also feel as if though when I get involved and I help cases like Joshua Woods' case and help mothers like Daisy Williams, it's as if though I'm beating it back away from my own family and my own children. So from a selfish perspective, that's why I get involved. But other than that, if I consider myself to be an advocate for justice, I can't just advocate for justice when law enforcement or government officials mistreat our people or mistreat our community. I have to be an advocate for justice even when we mistreat one another. So we're at this point in our development, in our maturity, in the struggle, where we have to demand justice even when the perpetrator looks just like us.
Absolutely. Now, of course, the verdict was announced this past Friday.
Yes.
For one of the assailants, Nycole, I believe is his name, and he was convicted of capital murder.
Yes.
Do you feel like some level of justice has been met?
I believe that a measure of justice has been given. As you know, there are 3 more perpetrators who are scheduled to go on trial very soon. But I'd like to say that when I heard the verdict, I was just as sad as I was when I heard about the death of Joshua Woods. Because even though we called for justice in the Nycole case, and we got it, it's still not a bittersweet moment, but it was just a bitter moment. Why? Because you have one case where 2 lives have already been lost. Joshua Woods is dead. He's no longer with us. Nycole IV will spend the rest of his natural life in a cage, in a cell. Who knows what those 2 brothers could have became? They may have been the next Dr. King, the next Louis Farrakhan, the next Barack Obama. Who knows what greatness lie in those 2 lives, but they're both just gone. And when you wrap it up and you make a synopsis of it and you look at it in a nutshell, that's what it is. And that unfortunately saddens me. But it's something that we had to go through if we're serious about the principle of justice.
Absolutely. Now, the cameras had captured, well, what many are calling the lack of reaction from Bland when he heard, the conviction. What is your response to that? It seemed like he had no emotion.
I can't say that I can identify with his disposition. I can't say that I can identify, with his disposition. I watched him throughout the week as the trial went on. I saw very little emotion. I personally saw very little remorse. If there was some remorse, it didn't show. So I think it just says that, well, I'll be honest with you, I look at that young man and I say, man, somewhere in his upbringing, something went wrong. Something's not right psychologically. But to be honest with you, I really don't know what to think, because if you're responsible for taking someone's life over a pair of sneakers, and if there's no remorse there, I just don't know what to think. And all you can do is pray for an individual like that. And even if there was no remorse, you'll have a long time to sit down and think about it. And hopefully someday, even though he'll be in a dark place, hopefully someday his mind will be enlightened to the fact of what he actually did, and that he would get on his knees and repent to Almighty God in hopes that he's forgiven by God.
Absolutely. Now, Ms. Williams, the cameras, we were able to capture her reaction. And when she was speaking to Mr. Bland, I believe she had something to say to Bland. And since she's not here to speak for herself, how has she been doing since, the announcement? Have you spoken to her since then? How's she holding up?
We've communicated briefly since then. I've made it a point to try to give my sister some space. And let me say publicly that Daisy Williams has got to be one of the strongest human beings that I have ever met in my entire life. Very strong-willed, and her resolve to get justice for her son and to make change in the wake of his death is something that I've probably never seen before. Daisy Williams took the stand, and she looked Neil Bland directly in his eyes. And what she said was that she observed him all week long, and she said to him, "I haven't seen an ounce of remorse on your face." And she said on December 21st, 1994, she's pointing to Neil Bland, "That's the day you were born." She said on December 21st, 2012, on your birthday, on the day that you came into the world, you took my son out of the world. And she asked him, "Could you please look at me? Just for a second, look at me." I don't know if he looked directly at her. And she told him, "I'm going to pray for you. And I'm going to pray for your family." Probably one of the most profound moments that I've ever witnessed in my entire life. A mother whose son was murdered for such a senseless reason, looking her son's killer in the face and saying, "I'm going to pray for you, and I'm going to pray for your family."
And, as we were saying before, this is a tragic that's occurring too many times,
Right.
Over material things.
Yes.
What do you think is a deeper issue here? What are we actually facing that's causing the youth to kill each other over a pair of sneakers? And it seems to be happening or reoccurring more so often in the black community. So what deeper issues are we facing here?
I think the issue that we face is the colonization of the minds of a generation.
Can you explain that?
Colonization meaning enslavement. And our young people, because many of them don't know their identity as young black men and women, young black girls and boys, they don't understand their history. They don't understand their ancestry. They don't understand from whence they came, so they're very, very foggy about where it is that they're going. Here we are, black people from Africa with European names. Most of us follow a European religion, a European way of life. So what you have going on in the younger generation is an identity crisis. And when you have an identity crisis and you don't know who you are, then you're always trying to identify with somebody or something else in order to increase your value. So when they go to the store and they purchase Air Jordan sneakers, see, it's bigger than just wanting to look cool. They actually believe that if I get these sneakers and I put them on my feet, my value will be increased. I'll receive the attention from the world that I'm not getting at home from my parents or from my community. They're searching for an identity. So they associate themselves with name brands. So if Air Jordan, Michael Jordan is great, and Nike is a great company, if I attach myself to their greatness, then maybe it will increase who it is that I am. But there's nobody there to tell them, unfortunately, that greatness lies within. And no material possession has more value or more power than that of the human life. And unfortunately, that message is either not being taught or that message has gotten lost. And unfortunately, we're losing our children because of that.
Do you think that Nike or Michael Jordan has some type of responsibility or holds some type of responsibility?
I'm glad you asked that question, because unfortunately, Daisy Williams, her family, and even myself have come under scrutiny for even implicating Nike and Michael Jordan in this murder. Let me first say that there are levels of responsibility in a case like this. The first level being with the individual who committed the crime. And anybody who says that Daisy Williams wants to put the blame on Michael Jordan and not the blame on the killer evidently did monitor the trial last week. So the person who is most responsible for Joshua Woods' death is paying the price. And Daisy Williams went through the legal processes to make sure that that happened. She's not trying to blame Michael Jordan for the death of her son. Her son is gone. She can't bring him back. What she's trying to do is save somebody else's son and or daughter from suffering the same thing she and her family has to suffer because of the death of her son. So those individuals who pulled the trigger are responsible. The communities and the families that failed them has to bear some responsibility. But some corporate and moral responsibility, we believe, has to be considered. First of all, if you're going to create the demand, then increase the supply. That's number one. Number two, you can always sell the sneakers online. If you see that people are dying over your product, sell the sneakers online. There's so many different ways, creative ways, that they could market, distribute, and release the sneakers other than the way that they're doing it, that we could sit up here and talk about it all day long. They know what they need to do. The question is whether or not the alternative method would be as profitable as this one. It boils down to money. Now, when little white children start dying, and I know what you're saying, well, only black children kill one another over Air Jordan sneakers. Yeah, but white children kill one another over other things. So, our murders go over-reported. Theirs go under-reported. So this is not just a black problem. But with this particular product, if those casualties were white and this was taking place in the suburbs, just like when crack cocaine started hitting the suburbs, things began to change. Things would change very quickly if the casualties were white. See, that is the basis for the term Black Lives Matter. Because in this country, black lives don't matter like they matter to other countries. If that were the case, then black people would receive reparations for the hundreds of millions of lives that we lost in the Middle Passage. Japanese people receive reparations for lives lost. Huh? Jewish people receive reparations for lives lost. Huh? But when we talk about reparations, you look at us funny face. No. We got to keep saying Black Lives Matter, because even in situations like this, when you're dealing with corporate America, unfortunately, they don't. Absolutely.
Well, Deric, thank you so much for joining me. And as you all know, just, stop the violence. That's all we want to, send that message out there, you guys. It's not worth it. It's not worth losing a life. And as Deric said, we've lost 2 lives in this situation. One is now behind bars, and one, sadly, is not with us anymore. Thank you for watching.